66 million years ago, the dinosaurs vanished, and from that silence the Paleocene began. It was a world reborn where strange mammals and new forests reshaped the planet. But what did life look like in this forgotten age? In this video we'll explore the dawn after extinction. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe and share, and tell us in the comments which creature of the Paleocene would you want to see alive today. Thank you for watching. Now, let's begin. In the first moments after the cataclysm that ended the age of the great reptiles, Earth's skies hold traces of what has just passed. The Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary leaves a mark not only in rocks, but in the very chemistry of the air. The violent impact in what is now the Yucatan Peninsula hurled immense amounts of vaporized rock and fine dust into the atmosphere. For months and even years the skies remain dimmed by haze. Sunlight is reduced, scattered into a diffuse glow rather than sharp beams, and global photosynthesis slows to a fraction of what it once was. The Paleocene begins in this altered atmosphere defined less by immediate brightness than by a gradual rebalancing of gases and particles. As time moves on from those first darkened seasons, fine material begins to settle into oceans and land surfaces. Heavier grains fall first, lighter particles drift for longer. With each rainfall, small amounts of soot and ash are drawn down. What remains is a sky no longer blackened but tinged with high-altitude aerosols that can persist for years. The clearing is not sudden. It is uneven, slower in some regions where atmospheric circulation traps particles. But the direction is clear from dim and cool to clearer and warmer. In the early Paleocene atmosphere, carbon dioxide is already high relative to modern values. This is partly because of the immense combustion triggered by the impact with global wildfires feeding gases into the air. It is also because the recovery of plant cover is delayed. With fewer leaves drawing down carbon dioxide, the balance shifts. Oxygen, though not dramatically reduced, is also in flux. Animals and plants that survive breathe in a mixture that feels familiar to us in composition, but altered in proportion. The greenhouse gases that now circulate will in time warm the planet far above what these first years suggest. Yet at the very beginning, the haze mutes the greenhouse effect. Sunlight cannot reach the surface efficiently, so even though carbon dioxide is abundant, surface temperatures remain cooler than they will be later. This paradox, high greenhouse gases but cool surface conditions, characterizes the immediate recovery window. Dust and soot are not the only atmospheric players. Sulfur compounds released both by the impact and by volcanic activity that continues across Earth combine with water vapor in the air to form droplets of sulfuric acid. These droplets remain suspended as aerosols scattering light and influencing climate. Rainfall in this interval is often acidic, weathering rocks more aggressively and washing minerals into rivers and oceans. The cycle of erosion intensifies, and sediment transport shapes the beginning of new landscapes. Airborne chemistry also includes nitrogen oxides formed during the fires. These contribute to ozone depletion in the upper atmosphere, letting through more ultraviolet radiation. In these early years, surviving organisms face not only altered light and temperature, but also increased exposure to radiation. Forest canopies where they exist offer some shelter, but in many places the protection is gone, and new growth struggles to take hold under harsher conditions. Gradually, however, the air begins to stabilize. Aerosols fall out, dust sinks, and the greenhouse signal grows stronger. By a few 100,000 years into the Paleocene, the sky resembles a version more familiar to us: blue, in clear conditions clouded by water vapor rather than by fire debris. The composition of the air, though, ensures that beneath this blue, the world warms quickly. Carbon dioxide concentrations several times higher than modern levels trap heat, setting Earth on a path toward a greenhouse climate. This shift is not abrupt, but step by step. Each year, each decade brings a slight change in average temperatures. Over tens of thousands of years, the effect is substantial. The memory of a cold, dim interval fades as warmth spreads. While the large picture is one of recovery, regional differences are striking. In higher latitudes, where the impact debris lingers longer in the atmosphere, the cooling phase persists. Winters in polar regions are darker and colder, stressing ecosystems that had already been reduced. In contrast, equatorial regions see quicker rebounds. The intensity of sunlight there is enough to break through the haze more effectively, restoring warmth and plant productivity sooner. These differences establish gradients across the planet, gradients that will shape the evolution of Paleocene ecosystems. The skies are part of that pattern, providing uneven light and warmth that influence vegetation and animal survival differently depending on location. The chemical legacy of the impact is visible not only in rocks but in air itself. The global iridium layer spread thin across sediments is a marker of extraterrestrial material dispersed in those chaotic first moments. But long after the particles have fallen, the altered balance of greenhouse gases remains. Volcanic activity, particularly in regions like India's Deccan Traps, continues to pump additional carbon dioxide into the air. Even though the peak eruptions occur before the boundary activity lingers into the Paleocene, each outgassing event reinforces the greenhouse trajectory, adding to the background of warming. In the earliest Paleocene, the atmosphere is also notable for its role in water cycling. With dust and soot clearing, evaporation begins to intensify. Warmth enhances this process, leading to more vigorous cloud formation and precipitation. The hydrological cycle strengthens compared to the dim interval immediately after the impact. Rain becomes more frequent, sometimes intense, contributing to soil saturation and the re-establishment of rivers and lakes. This rainfall carrying dissolved acids and minerals further reshapes the land. Air, water, and land are deeply coupled, each influencing the other in the slow rebound from extinction. The sky also influences life directly through light. Photosynthetic organisms reduced to refugees during the darkest years begin to recover as sunlight strengthens. Plankton in the oceans, algae in freshwater systems, and small plants on land all take advantage of the gradual return of usable light. These organisms form the foundation of food webs, so their recovery is critical. With each step toward clearer skies, biological productivity increases. The atmosphere thus sets the pace for the entire biosphere. The Paleocene world cannot rebuild until the air allows light and warmth to return. As centuries become millennia, the memory of a darkened planet becomes geological rather than atmospheric. Layers of soot are buried, acids are neutralized, and volcanic gases disperse into the expanding air. The balance shifts towards stability, though at a new baseline, warmer, wetter, more greenhouse-driven. The beginning of the Paleocene is marked by this passage. It is a world reborn not in a single moment, but in a slow sequence of changes in the skies above. The atmosphere is the first domain to settle, and in doing so it frames everything that follows. The air clears, the gases stabilize, and with that, Earth prepares for the unfolding of new climates, new ecosystems, and new life forms in the millions of years that remain within this epoch. With the skies clearing and the dust of catastrophe settling, Earth moves steadily into a new climatic state. The most defining feature of this early Paleocene interval is the presence of high greenhouse gas concentrations, particularly carbon dioxide, that accumulate in the atmosphere. These gases act as a blanket trapping solar radiation and holding heat close to the surface. Where the immediate aftermath of the impact produced a cooling shadow, the longer trajectory is one of warming. Temperatures rise not evenly but in pulses driven by both residual volcanic outgassing and the slow recovery of global vegetation. The greenhouse effect amplifies as forests expand and soils stabilize, creating a feedback system that sustains elevated warmth. This warmth is not a short episode, but a durable trend that will last throughout the Paleocene, guiding the course of recovery and shaping every ecosystem. Carbon dioxide levels in the early Paleocene are estimated to be several times higher than those known in the present. Methane, another greenhouse gas, also plays a role released from wetlands that expand as the world becomes warmer and wetter. Together, these gases give the Paleocene a climate state often described as a greenhouse Earth, distinct from the cooler icehouse phases that characterize other times in Earth's history. Polar regions, though still cooler than the equator, do not experience sustained ice cover. Glaciers that may have survived in sheltered places vanish, leaving ice-free poles and coastlines. Seasonal changes remain, but the underlying baseline is warm, allowing forests and plant life to spread even into high latitudes. The warming effect extends into the oceans, which are sensitive to atmospheric conditions. As air temperatures rise, so too do sea surface temperatures. Warm waters absorb gases differently than cooler ones, and this change alters the chemistry of oceans. Higher temperatures reduce the solubility of oxygen in seawater, creating conditions where circulation becomes essential to maintain livable habitats for marine organisms. Currents driven by winds and the configuration of continents begin to redistribute heat, carrying warmth toward the poles and balancing gradients across latitudes. This circulation is not yet as vigorous as in later epochs, but it re-establishes patterns that had been disrupted at the boundary. The interaction between greenhouse gases and the hydrological cycle becomes increasingly pronounced. Warmer air holds more moisture, leading to greater evaporation from seas and soils. Clouds form more readily, and rainfall becomes more abundant across much of the planet. In some regions, precipitation nourishes the return of dense vegetation, while in others it promotes erosion, carrying sediments into river deltas and coastal margins. Storm intensity likely increases in response to higher evaporation rates, though the precise character of these systems is not recorded directly. What is clear is that water circulation accelerates, linking the atmosphere, land, and oceans in a powerful feedback loop. One of the key outcomes of this greenhouse climate is the absence of permanent polar ice. Without large reflective ice sheets, Earth's albedo, the fraction of sunlight reflected back into space, is reduced. Darker ocean surfaces and forested lands absorb more energy, amplifying warming further. This creates a stable feedback, reinforcing the greenhouse state. The polar regions that are receiving less direct sunlight, warm enough to support vegetation and animal life. Fossil evidence from later Paleocene strata shows that crocodile relatives and broad-leaved plants can thrive at high latitudes, testimony to the reach of this greenhouse climate. The seeds of that transformation are sown in these earlier stages as warmth steadily spreads. The atmospheric circulation under these greenhouse conditions also differs from cooler intervals. The equator to pole temperature gradient is weaker because the poles are relatively warm. With less contrast in temperature, wind belts shift, altering storm tracks and precipitation zones. The jet streams that today are tightly constrained may have been broader, meandering differently across continents and seas. These patterns influence where rain falls, where deserts form, and how forests expand. Over tens of thousands of years, such atmospheric dynamics lay the groundwork for stable biomes, even as recovery from the extinction continues. Geochemical evidence from sediments records the trace of these changes. Isotopes of carbon preserved in shells and organic matter indicate the elevated carbon dioxide levels and their cycling through the biosphere. Oxygen isotopes reveal warming trends, especially in ocean waters. Together, these records paint a consistent picture. The Paleocene is a time of sustained greenhouse warmth, distinct from the cooler and more variable climates that preceded it. The greenhouse state is not uniform, but it is continuous, shaping ecosystems and evolution in every region. This warmth has profound implications for the return of vegetation. Plants, particularly flowering species, thrive in the higher levels of carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis becomes more efficient and growth rates increase. Forests recover with vigor, spreading across continents and locking away carbon in wood and soils. Over the long term, this biological drawdown moderates atmospheric concentrations somewhat, but never enough to reverse the greenhouse state. Instead, the system finds a new equilibrium, warmer and wetter than before. Vegetation acts both as a regulator and as a recorder of climate, with pollen grains preserved in sediments, showing the dominance of broadleaved trees, ferns and conifers in various regions. The greenhouse Earth of the Paleocene is not a climate humans would recognize from modern times. Global mean surface temperatures are higher by many degrees, and seasonal ranges are narrower. Winters, even at higher latitudes, are mild, while summers are hot but buffered by moisture. The spread of forests into high latitudes reflects this stability, creating ecosystems that are less prone to frost or prolonged drought. The greenhouse gases that drive this state are not transient spikes, but sustained conditions reinforcing the identity of the Paleocene as a distinct chapter in Earth's climate history. Within this greenhouse framework, ecosystems begin to diversify. Animals adapt to the warmth by expanding into new niches, and plants extend their ranges. The climate provides a backdrop that encourages recovery rather than suppressing it. The shift from the dim, cold skies of the immediate post-impact world to the greenhouse warmth of the Paleocene represents a turning point marking the true beginning of recovery at the planetary scale. As the atmosphere stabilizes into this new regime, the stage is set for oceans, continents, and ecosystems to reorganize under conditions that are consistently warm and supportive of life's expansion. The Paleocene greenhouse does not simply represent higher temperatures. It defines the pace and direction of recovery, influencing the chemistry of oceans, the expansion of forests, and the diversification of mammals and birds. With each passing millennium, the balance between atmosphere and biosphere strengthens, ensuring that warmth and productivity are linked. This interplay, begun in the skies and mediated through greenhouse gases, is the foundation upon which the Paleocene world is rebuilt. As Earth warms under the influence of greenhouse gases, attention turns toward the oceans, for they are the great regulators of planetary stability. The seas of the early Paleocene carry the scars of the mass extinction that preceded them. Planktonic communities had been devastated at the boundary, with many calcareous forms disappearing entirely. Coral reefs, once complex habitats of the late Cretaceous, suffer severe losses, leaving shallow waters largely barren in the first stages of recovery. Yet as the skies clear and sunlight penetrates the surface again, the chemistry of the oceans begins to reset. Circulation patterns reform, nutrients begin to cycle once more, and new communities start to build the foundations of marine ecosystems that will persist through the epoch. The first and most critical shift in the oceans is the restoration of circulation. The impact had disrupted thermal gradients and clouded surface waters, limiting the mixing that carries oxygen into deeper layers. Without circulation, oxygen levels fall, and in many basins anoxic conditions take hold. Black shales deposited at this time testify to these suffocating conditions. Gradually, as dust settles and sunlight warms surface waters, winds resume their role in driving surface currents. These currents in turn re-establish connections between basins, allowing cooler oxygen-rich waters to sink and spread along the ocean floor. The process is slow, taking thousands of years, but it is decisive. With each step of renewed mixing, oxygen returns to deeper habitats, enabling benthic organisms to reoccupy their niches. Chemically, the oceans of the early Paleocene are enriched in carbon and other elements carried by intensified weathering on land. Acid rains generated in the first years after the impact accelerate the breakdown of rocks, washing calcium, magnesium, and silicate minerals into rivers. These nutrients eventually reach the seas, fueling productivity. Phytoplankton, microscopic plants that form the base of marine food chains, begin to recover. Diatoms and dinoflagellates, more resilient groups, flourish in the warming waters. Their photosynthetic activity draws down carbon dioxide, linking the atmosphere and ocean in a feedback system. Coccolithophores, heavily reduced during the boundary event, take longer to return, but by the middle Paleocene their distinctive calcium carbonate plates once again accumulate in sediments, leaving a geological record of recovery. As productivity increases, so too does the formation of marine snow, the constant rain of organic matter, from surface waters to the seafloor. This flux nourishes deep-sea ecosystems, where worms, mollusks, and small crustaceans repopulate sediments. The re-establishment of benthic communities is essential, for they recycle nutrients and stabilize the seafloor environment. Fossil records of foraminifera, small-shelled organisms that live both at the surface and in deeper waters, capture this rebound. Their shells, preserved in vast numbers, record isotopic signals of changing temperatures and carbon cycling, offering a detailed window into the recovery of marine conditions. Temperature in the oceans rises along with the air, but in a more buffered way. Surface waters in equatorial regions warm considerably, while polar seas become ice-free. The reduction of temperature gradients allows for different circulation pathways than those of colder epochs. Instead of strong contrasts between poles and tropics, the Paleocene oceans display more even warmth, though with sufficient variation to drive currents. This configuration fosters stable, widespread habitats for plankton and larger marine animals. Sharks, which had survived the extinction, continue to thrive, diversifying into forms adapted to the warmer seas. Teleost fishes expand in abundance, filling niches once occupied by other groups now gone. In coastal margins, sediments washed from rejuvenated rivers build deltas and estuaries. These environments become cradles of new diversity. Mangrove-like vegetation begins to edge into tidal zones, stabilizing soils and providing shelter for juvenile fishes and invertebrates. The organic rich muds of these areas preserve an abundance of fossils, documenting the resurgence of life along shorelines. Shallow seas, though lacking the intricate coral reefs of earlier times, develop new structures of community built around sponges, rudest replacements, and opportunistic bivalves. These habitats lack the complexity of Cretaceous reefs, but nonetheless support a variety of life. One remarkable aspect of the Paleocene seas is the persistence of ammonites' absence. These once dominant mollusks vanish at the extinction and do not return. Their disappearance leaves ecological space that other groups fill. Nautiloids, distant relatives, continue in smaller numbers, but it is the squids and octopuses that begin to rise as important cephalopod groups in this new era. The absence of ammonites is a reminder that while recovery can be robust, it is not a simple return to what was before. The oceans are transformed, reshaped by extinction, and by the warming climate that follows. Large marine reptiles too are gone. Mosasaurs and plesiosaurs do not reappear, and their roles in food webs are redistributed among sharks, large fishes, and eventually marine mammals. In the Paleocene, the ancestors of whales are still land-dwelling, but their evolutionary story will be written on the stage set by these transformed seas. For now, the top predators are primarily sharks, and in some regions giant flightless birds that patrol coastal shallows. These birds, newly emergent in the Paleocene, take fish and small vertebrates from estuarine waters, linking marine and terrestrial ecosystems in novel ways. The chemistry of carbonate sediments reveals further changes. With warming waters and enhanced weathering, carbonate deposition accelerates. Chalks and limestones form in shallow seas, recording both the presence of planktonic producers and the conditions of their environment. In deep waters, the carbonate compensation depth, the level below which calcium carbonate dissolves, shifts in response to ocean chemistry. These dynamics recorded in layered sediments provide evidence of fluctuating conditions as the oceans recover. The interplay between biology and geochemistry is central. As life rebounds, it alters the chemistry, which in turn feeds back into life's possibilities. By the Middle Paleocene, the oceans achieve a stability not seen since before the extinction. Productivity is high, circulation is steady, and ecosystems support increasing diversity. New groups of fishes, foraminifera, and mollusks establish themselves, many of which will persist into later epochs. The seas are warmer, richer in nutrients, and absent of some former giants, but they are vibrant once more. The process of recovery is not uniform, yet its direction is consistent. From an anoxic, darkened state, the oceans return to function as the planet's great life support system, linked inseparably to the atmosphere above and the continents that feed them. The Paleocene oceans are a reminder of resilience, but also of transformation. What emerges from the recovery is not a mirror of what was lost, but a new equilibrium. Warm, dynamic, and filled with life that traces its roots to survivors of the extinction, the seas form the foundation upon which terrestrial ecosystems also build. The rhythm of waves, the cycling of nutrients, and the quiet productivity of plankton are all signs that Earth after catastrophe is once again a living planet, its oceans carrying the story of recovery across every basin. While the oceans regain their stability and circulation, the continents of the Paleocene continue their restless drift, driven by the deep forces of plate tectonics. The arrangement of land masses during this epoch is both familiar and strange, forming a recognizable outline of modern geography, but shifted in ways that profoundly shape climate and ecosystems. The Atlantic Ocean, though narrower than today, has already opened wide enough to separate Africa from South America and North America from Europe. The Indian subcontinent speeds northward across the Tethys Ocean, approaching its eventual collision with Asia. Australia, still joined with Antarctica, remains positioned far to the south, while Greenland begins to detach from Europe. This continental choreography dictates the pathways of winds, the spread of seas, and the habitats available for life. In North America, the retreat of the western interior seaway leaves behind broad plains, where sediments from the Rocky Mountains accumulate. These mountains themselves, still young, continue to rise. A subduction along the western margin uplifts vast ranges. The uplift alters rainfall patterns, producing rain shadows to the east and wetter conditions to the west. Sediments eroded from these mountains form fertile floodplains that in time support expanding forests. In South America, tectonic stability dominates much of the continent, but along its western edge, subduction zones continue to shape coastal mountain ranges. To the east, vast lowlands begin to host thick forests enriched by river systems that drain into the widening Atlantic. Africa lies near the equator, mostly stable in its continental core. Tropical conditions encourage forests, but in some interior regions, seasonal dryness still favors open woodlands. Northern Africa, not yet fully arid, experiences wetter conditions than in modern times as the global climate is uniformly warmer and wetter. To the east, the Arabian region remains part of Africa not yet split by the Red Sea. Europe, fragmented into islands and peninsulas, lies closer to the tropics than it does today. Shallow seas flood its margins, creating archipelagos, where land animals disperse and marine life mingles with terrestrial forms along coastlines. Asia, the largest landmass, stretches far to the north. Its southern edges border the Tethys Ocean, where the approaching Indian subcontinent creates a narrowing seaway. The contact has not yet produced the Himalayas, but tectonic activity in this region builds smaller mountain ranges and uplifts terrains that will later become crucial to global circulation. Siberia, lying in the far north, is ice-free, its vast expanses covered in forests rather than tundra. This high-latitude warmth is one of the hallmarks of the Paleocene, made possible by the greenhouse climate and the absence of polar ice sheets. The Antarctic continent, still joined with Australia, is positioned farther south, but not yet locked in permanent cold. Its coasts host forests of conifers and southern beaches thriving in the mild polar climate. The interior is cooler with seasonal darkness, yet without glaciation it supports soils and vegetation. This land will later become the site of massive ice sheets, but in the Paleocene it remains a green, habitable environment. Australia itself, though southern, shares this temperate climate, supporting forests that extend across its broad terrain. Marsupials already present inhabit these forests and begin their slow radiation that will define Australia's later ecosystems. Greenland, lying between Europe and North America, starts to rift slowly away from the Eurasian landmass. Volcanic activity in this region, linked to the North Atlantic igneous province, releases additional carbon dioxide, reinforcing the greenhouse state. Flood basalts and volcanic centres mark the landscape, their lava flows and ash layers captured in geological records. These eruptions are not of the same catastrophic scale as earlier Deccan Traps events, but they contribute to the steady background of greenhouse gases that maintain Paleocene warmth. Continental positions play a direct role in climate circulation. The widening Atlantic allows for north-south currents that redistribute equatorial warmth to higher latitudes. The Tethys Ocean still broad funnels warm waters eastward, influencing the climates of Asia and Europe. Land bridges remain between some continents, allowing limited faunal exchange. For example, North America and Europe are linked at times through high-latitude routes, while Asia connects more readily with Europe and Africa. These connections shape the dispersal of plants and animals, permitting migrations that repopulate regions left vacant by extinction. Mountain building exerts a subtler influence. Rising ranges alter wind patterns and rainfall, influencing where forests grow and where dry zones emerge. The Rocky Mountains in North America and smaller uplifts in Asia shift circulation, channeling moisture into new basins. Erosion from these ranges feeds rivers that build fertile soils downstream. Over long spans, these processes enrich floodplains and deltas, laying the groundwork for flourishing ecosystems. Sedimentary basins across continents preserve evidence of this dynamic geography. Thick layers of sandstone, shale, and coal document shifting rivers, lakes, and wetlands. Fossil pollen within these sediments reveals the return and spread of vegetation, often tied to regional tectonic settings. In coastal zones, marine sediments interleave with terrestrial deposits, showing how sea levels fluctuate with tectonic and climatic forces. These basins are the record keepers of Paleocene landscapes, archiving both the geological changes and the biological responses. The continents are not static platforms for life, but active participants in shaping environments. Their drift alters the position of climatic belts. Where equatorial forests once thrived, uplift or shifting latitudes may bring cooler or drier conditions. Where seas once separated, land masses collisions create new routes and barriers for dispersal. The Paleocene world is a transitional geography, recognizable yet incomplete setting, the stage for later tectonic rearrangements that will culminate in the more modern arrangement of continents. The physical landscapes of the Paleocene are often dominated by forests, but beneath them tectonics is at work. Subduction zones along continental margins produce chains of volcanoes. Rift valleys cut across places where plates pull apart. Faults mark boundaries, recording the stresses of drifting masses. These features remind us that while climate and ecosystems respond to atmospheric conditions, the underlying framework of continents is shaped by slow but relentless geological forces. By the end of the Paleocene, continents have already taken on much of their present outline, though still displaced. The Atlantic grows wider, the Indian subcontinent approaches Asia, and Antarctica drifts southward. These motions, measured in mere centimetres per year, accumulate into continental-scale changes over millions of years. The landscapes that host forests, rivers and animals are not permanent but ever-shifting. This movement provides the long-term context for recovery, ensuring that as life adapts, the ground beneath it evolves as well. The geography of the Paleocene is thus both a foundation and a driver of recovery. Mountain ranges, coastlines and basins shape where ecosystems arise. Continental drift dictates climate belts, ocean circulation, and opportunities for dispersal. In this interplay between geology and life, Earth continues its slow transformation, after catastrophe re-establishing a planet not only alive but dynamic in its very structure. With the continents in motion and the oceans regaining circulation, Earth in the Paleocene develops a climate system defined not only by warmth, but also by gradients across latitudes. These gradients, though less stark than in modern times, determine the distribution of biomes and the ways in which life reorganizes. At the equator, the sun's energy falls most directly, fueling high rates of evaporation and precipitation. Thick clouds form heavy rainfall, and dense forests begin to reclaim ground cleared by extinction. Moving poleward, conditions change gradually rather than abruptly. Subtropical belts are humid, and warm temperate zones are mild, and even high-latitude regions remain free of ice. This smoother gradient allows plants and animals to occupy ranges far broader than in icehouse worlds. The entire planet shares in warmth, though, with regional differences in rainfall and seasonality. The atmosphere distributes this energy unevenly. Equatorial air rises in great convective cells, producing belts of rainfall that stretch across continents. These cells drive circulation with air sinking again in subtropical regions. In modern times, such sinking produces deserts, but in the Paleocene, high greenhouse gases and abundant oceanic moisture prevent extreme aridity. Instead, subtropical regions are often woodlands or savannas, dotted with flowering plants and ferns. In temperate belts, rainfall remains reliable, supporting mixed forests. Toward the poles, where sunlight is weaker, seasonal darkness is more pronounced, yet average temperatures are mild enough to sustain forests of conifers and broad-leaved species. The contrast between equator and pole is real, but subdued, creating a largely forested Earth. The weaker gradient also alters wind patterns. Without strong temperature contrast between tropics and poles, jet streams lose some of their intensity. Storm systems track along different routes, spreading rainfall more evenly. This moderation reduces the likelihood of broad deserts, leaving only small patches of drier climate in continental interiors or rain shadows behind mountain ranges. The global climate is thus one of warmth and moisture, with forests and wetlands covering vast expanses. Grasslands do not yet exist. Grasses themselves are rare and minor, so no open grassy plains break the forest continuum. The vegetation mosaic is one of woodlands, swampy lowlands, and dense tropical canopies stitched together across continents by the shared warmth of the greenhouse atmosphere. Evidence of these gradients comes from plant fossils preserved in sediments. Leaf shapes are sensitive to climate, and in Paleocene deposits across North America and Europe, broad leaves with smooth edges dominate, indicating consistently warm conditions. In higher latitudes, leaves with slightly more serrated margins suggest cooler but still mild climates. The presence of palms and other tropical indicators in areas far north of their modern ranges underscores the extent of warmth. Fossil pollen adds detail, showing the spread of flowering plants, ferns and conifers across latitudes. This record is remarkably consistent. Earth in the Paleocene is a green planet forested nearly from pole to pole. The oceans mirror this gradient. Equatorial seas are warm and productive, teeming with plankton that form the base of marine food webs. Polar waters are cooler but not frigid, supporting diverse communities without the stress of ice cover. Currents carry heat poleward, smoothing the gradient further. This circulation ensures that life in the oceans, like on land, benefits from stability and warmth. Shifts in productivity correspond to shifts in nutrient supply, influenced by continental runoff and upwelling zones. Coastal areas near rivers, rich in sediments and nutrients, support particularly lush ecosystems, while open oceans maintain steadier but less concentrated productivity. The greenhouse conditions also reduce seasonal contrasts. In equatorial regions, day length and temperature vary little, producing nearly uniform conditions year-round. In temperate zones, seasons exist but are muted compared to modern climates. Winters are mild summers, warm but rarely extreme. At the poles, long days of summer light and long nights of winter darkness persist, but without ice sheets, vegetation can grow during the sunlit months. Animals living at high latitudes adapt to the rhythms of light rather than extremes of cold. This relative moderation allows ecosystems to extend into regions that would otherwise be hostile. These climate gradients play a critical role in shaping evolutionary pathways. Mammals, birds and reptiles expand their ranges widely, encountering diverse habitats but not extreme barriers. Migration routes open across continents, encouraging gene flow and dispersal. Forest corridors stretch across latitudes, providing continuous habitat for arboreal species. Wetlands and river systems interconnect lowlands, sustaining aquatic and semi-aquatic forms. With warmth and moisture widespread, the limiting factors are not temperature or aridity, but food resources and competition. Soils also respond to these gradients. In equatorial regions, heavy rainfall leaches nutrients, producing lateritic soils, rich in iron but poor in fertility. Forests thrive nonetheless, supported by rapid cycling of organic matter. In subtropical and temperate zones, soils are more balanced, enriched by seasonal leaf fall and moderate rainfall. In polar forests, cooler temperatures slow decomposition, allowing thick organic layers to accumulate. These soils support vegetation that in turn shapes animal communities. The link between climate, soil and vegetation ensures that gradients of temperature and rainfall translate directly into gradients of ecosystems. Climate models of the Paleocene suggest average global temperatures several degrees warmer than today, with little to no permanent ice. Sea levels are higher, flooding low-lying coastal plains. These shallow seas influence regional climates, further moderating conditions and providing habitats for marine and estuarine life. In some areas, inland seas persist remnants of earlier high sea levels. These bodies of water act as heat reservoirs, stabilizing climate and supporting ecosystems at their margins. The interplay of sea and land creates a mosaic of environments all underpinned by the overarching greenhouse state. The resilience of life in this climate is evident in the fossil record. Forests spread into regions that today lie within the Arctic Circle, and animals adapt to exploit these new ranges. Reptiles, including turtles and crocodilian relatives, extend their distributions far north, supported by mild winters. Birds diversify across habitats, some remaining small and arboreal, others becoming large ground dwellers in open woodlands. Mammals expand into niches across the gradients from equatorial canopies to temperate lowlands. Each group responds to climate in its own way, yet all benefit from the widespread warmth. The gradients of the Paleocene are not uniform across time. Regional variations occur influenced by volcanic activity, tectonic shifts and orbital cycles. Some intervals may see slightly cooler or warmer phases or changes in rainfall distribution. Yet the broad pattern remains stable, a warm, moist world with forests stretching across latitudes. This stability fosters recovery from extinction, encouraging diversity to return and expand. Unlike the instability of the immediate post-impact years, the Paleocene provides a climatic foundation upon which ecosystems can grow confidently. By linking the equator to the poles with gradients that are gentle rather than severe, the Paleocene climate creates a planet hospitable to life across nearly every region. The distribution of warmth and rainfall shapes soils, vegetation and animal ranges, guiding the assembly of ecosystems that will characterize the epoch. The climate gradient, softened by greenhouse gases and absence of ice, defines the ecological possibilities of this world reborn. As the greenhouse climate of the Paleocene stabilizes, vegetation begins to reclaim landscapes that had been stripped bare by the extinction. In the earlier stages, ferns and mosses dominate disturbed soils, spreading quickly across open ground and providing the first cover for ecosystems in recovery. These pioneer plants, resilient to poor soils and harsh conditions, form carpets of green that slow erosion and begin the slow accumulation of organic matter. Their presence prepares the way for more complex plant communities, and in time forests return to fill the land. The expansion of vegetation is not uniform, but within a few million years, after the boundary forests spread widely across continents, covering slopes, valleys and floodplains with dense growth. Conifers, survivors of the Cretaceous, continue to play a prominent role. Pine relatives, along with groups such as araucarias and podocarps, remain important in many regions, especially at higher latitudes where cooler conditions still prevail. In the southern hemisphere, southern beeches form extensive stands, their leaves adapted to mild polar climates. These trees dominate landscapes in what is now South America, Australia and Antarctica, showing the resilience of older lineages even in a changing world. Cycads and ginkgos, though, diminished from their peak, persist in scattered regions, reminders of floras that once coexisted with dinosaurs. Yet, it is the flowering plants, or angiosperms, that take the lead in reshaping Paleocene landscapes. Having appeared in the Cretaceous, they now expand rapidly, taking advantage of the open niches left by extinction. Broadleaf trees spread into temperate and tropical regions, their leaves forming canopies that cast shade and alter the microclimate below. Deciduous habits evolve in some groups, particularly in high-latitude forests, where long seasonal darkness requires trees to drop leaves. Palms appear in abundance, spreading far beyond modern tropical ranges into latitudes that today would be considered temperate. Their presence in fossil assemblages of North America and Europe speaks to the warmth and uniformity of climate. The spread of flowering plants transforms ecosystems in fundamental ways. Their rapid growth rates and diverse reproductive strategies allow them to colonize a wide range of habitats from riverbanks to upland slopes. Many produce fruits and seeds that attract animals, establishing new relationships between plants and herbivores. Pollination strategies diversify as insects themselves, recovering from extinction losses, interact with angiosperms. Bees, beetles, and flies carry pollen from flower to flower, ensuring genetic exchange and promoting diversity. The evolution of nectar rewards encourages these interactions, binding plant and insect success together in mutual dependence. Forests themselves become layered systems with distinct strata of canopy, understory, and forest floor. This vertical complexity provides habitats for animals that exploit each level. The canopy hosts climbing mammals and birds, the understory shelters herbivores and small predators, and the forest floor supports decomposers, insects, and scavengers. The return of dense vegetation also influences climate by drawing down carbon dioxide and altering water cycles. Transpiration from broad leaves increases atmospheric humidity, feeding into rainfall and stabilizing regional climates. Forests not only respond to greenhouse warmth, but reinforce it by shaping the planet's hydrological balance. Wetlands expand in many regions nourished by increased rainfall and rising groundwater. Swamps and bogs develop along rivers and lowlands filled with ferns, horsetails, and water-tolerant angiosperms. These wetlands trap organic matter, creating peat layers that in time compress into coal deposits. Fossil evidence from North America and Europe shows abundant remains of swamp forests, including cypress-like conifers and broad-leaved trees that thrive in saturated soils. These habitats support diverse communities of insects, amphibians, and early mammals, offering both food and shelter in a landscape shaped by water. The forests of the Paleocene also extend into polar regions. Fossilized wood and leaf impressions from high-latitude deposits reveal forests of conifers and broad-leaved deciduous trees growing in areas that today lie within the Arctic and Antarctic circles. These forests endure long periods of darkness in winter and continuous light in summer, yet the mild temperatures allow them to persist. Seasonal leaf drop helps trees conserve energy during the dark months while summer light fuels rapid growth. The existence of these forests highlights the extraordinary warmth of the Paleocene greenhouse climate and the adaptability of plants to extreme light cycles. The soils beneath these forests undergo transformation as well. With abundant plant cover, organic matter accumulates enriching soils and promoting fertility. Microorganisms and fungi decompose litter, releasing nutrients back into the system. In wetter areas, soils become acidic as organic matter builds faster than it decays, fostering specialized plant communities. In drier uplands, weathering of rocks continues under the influence of rainfall, creating clay-rich soils that support forests of angiosperms and conifers. This interplay between vegetation and soil creates feedbacks that stabilize ecosystems and promote biodiversity. The fossil record preserves these changes in remarkable detail. Leaf impressions found in shales and sandstones capture the diversity of Paleocene floras, showing the spread of broad-leaved angiosperms alongside conifers. Pollen grains preserved in sediments worldwide provide a continuous record of vegetation change. These microscopic fossils reveal shifts in dominance from ferns to angiosperms and from conifers to flowering trees, reflecting the broader trajectory of plant evolution. Coal seams rich in compressed plant matter document the extent of swamp forests and the abundance of vegetation across lowlands. Together, these records illustrate a planet covered in green, with forests reclaiming dominance across latitudes. The return of forests has consequences beyond plants themselves. With vegetation providing shade shelter and food, animal life begins to diversify in step. Insects thrive in the new abundance of flowers and leaves. Herbivores find fruits, seeds, and foliage to sustain larger populations. Predators follow, taking advantage of the growing prey base. Birds many descended from lineages that survived the extinction exploit forest habitats, while mammals begin to experiment with arboreal lifestyles. The expansion of vegetation thus sets the stage for the restructuring of terrestrial ecosystems, establishing the framework in which vertebrates diversify. Though forests are widespread, regional variation is significant. In equatorial regions, dense evergreen rainforests dominate, filled with towering angiosperms and lianas. In subtropical zones, forests mix with open woodlands where deciduous trees and palms intermingle. Temperate regions host mixed conifer and broad-leaved forests, while high-latitude zones support deciduous stands adapted to seasonal darkness. Wetlands, rivers, and floodplains punctuate all these regions, providing a patchwork of habitats within the broader forest matrix. This variation, shaped by latitude rainfall and soils, creates ecological diversity across the planet. By the middle Paleocene, vegetation has fully reclaimed the Earth. From equator to pole forests stand as symbols of recovery, their leaves absorbing sunlight and their roots binding soils. The planet is once again green, transformed from the bare landscapes of the immediate post-impact years into a world of abundance. This greening of Earth defines the epoch, setting the stage for the diversification of animals and the complex food webs that will follow. In the shelter of these forests, ecosystems gather strength, ready to support the next chapters of life's recovery. As forests spread across continents, their canopies rise into layered structures that reshape ecosystems from the ground up. The Paleocene world is not simply covered by trees, but structured into multi-tiered habitats, where light, moisture, and nutrients are partitioned with precision. In tropical regions near the equator, broad-leaved angiosperms dominate their crowns, locking together to form dense overhead canopies that admit little direct sunlight to the forest floor. Beneath these green roofs, a dim understory thrives, filled with shrubs, ferns, and young trees adapted to low light. Vines and lianas climb upward, competing for access to the sunlit canopy. The result is a vertical mosaic of life, with each stratum hosting species adapted to its unique conditions. The formation of canopies transforms local climates within forests. Temperatures beneath the leafy roof remain more stable than in open landscapes buffered against extremes of heat. Humidity builds as transpiration releases water vapor, producing an environment where rainfall is recycled and clouds gather more readily. In the equatorial forests of the Paleocene, this cycle is strong enough to sustain near-constant moisture, ensuring lush growth year-round. Seasonal variations exist but are muted, and the ecological continuity allows species to specialize in narrow niches. The canopy thus becomes not only a physical barrier to light, but also a driver of ecological stability. Animals adapt rapidly to this layered structure. Insects flourish, exploiting leaves, flowers, and fruits in every layer. Arboreal mammals begin to diversify, some developing grasping hands and feet to move among branches. Early primate-like forms, still small and generalized, find opportunities in these forests, feeding on fruits and insects in the understory and lower canopy. Birds too adapt to canopy life, with some species navigating dense foliage and others exploiting open spaces at the canopy top. The abundance of fruits produced by flowering trees supports both arboreal and terrestrial animals, weaving complex food webs dependent on the productivity of forests. The architecture of forests influences the soils below. Dense root systems stabilize slopes and river banks, slowing erosion and allowing soils to accumulate organic matter. Leaf litter builds on the forest floor, feeding fungi, bacteria, and invertebrates that recycle nutrients. This decomposition is rapid in humid conditions, ensuring that nutrients remain in circulation. The result is a system where much of the fertility is locked within living biomass rather than in soils. When trees fall, gaps in the canopy allow light to penetrate, triggering bursts of regeneration as new seedlings race upward. These dynamic cycles of disturbance and renewal ensure that Paleocene forests remain ever-changing yet continuous in their coverage. In higher latitudes, canopies take on different structures. Deciduous forests dominate regions where long winters of darkness challenge evergreen growth. Trees drop their leaves before the sun sets for the season, conserving energy until light returns. The summer, though brief, provides long days of continuous sunlight that fuel rapid growth. These forests create striking seasonal contrasts: dark, bare branches in winter and lush green canopies in summer. Animals in these regions adapt not to cold, but to cycles of light and food availability. Some hibernate or reduce activity in winter darkness, while others migrate or exploit stored resources. The forest canopy remains central, dictating the rhythm of survival. The presence of dense canopies alters atmospheric chemistry as well. Through photosynthesis, forests draw down large amounts of carbon dioxide, moderating the greenhouse effect to some degree. Oxygen levels rise slowly as a byproduct of this activity, enhancing conditions for aerobic organisms. The canopy also recycles water, contributing to global humidity and influencing rainfall patterns beyond the forests themselves. In this way, Paleocene forests are not passive recipients of climate, but active players in its regulation. They help stabilize the world that allows them to thrive, binding atmospheric, hydrological, and ecological systems into one interconnected web. Evidence of canopy development appears in fossil assemblages. Pollen grains reveal the dominance of angiosperms in many regions, while impressions of broad leaves suggest dense coverage. Fossilized wood indicates trees of considerable size, some reaching tens of meters in height, sufficient to create stratified forests. Insects preserved in amber show adaptations to canopy life, such as specialized mouth parts for feeding on flowers or resin. Small mammal fossils with grasping digits and flexible limbs reflect arboreal habits that could only develop in forests with vertical structure. Together, these records confirm that the Paleocene canopy is not a conceptual reconstruction, but a real functioning ecological architecture. The canopy also creates new opportunities for evolutionary experimentation. Epiphytes, plants that grow upon other plants, begin to appear more frequently in Paleocene forests, taking advantage of elevated positions where light is abundant but soils are absent. Mosses, ferns, and early orchids anchor themselves on branches, absorbing water and nutrients from the air and rainfall. These epiphytes add to the complexity of canopy habitats, creating microenvironments where insects and small animals can live apart from the forest floor. This diversification of niches drives coevolutionary relationships as animals adapt to exploit canopy-specific resources. In addition to their ecological roles, canopies shape the sensory environment. The dim understory fosters animals that rely less on vision and more on smell or hearing, while the bright canopy top encourages keen eyesight. Birds develop adaptations for maneuvering among branches, and insects evolve bright colors for signaling in patches of sunlight. Mammals explore both layers, some clinging to trunks, others leaping between branches. The vertical dimension of forests adds a new axis of diversity, expanding possibilities for adaptation. The global spread of these canopies ensures that forests influence nearly every ecosystem. Even in subtropical and temperate regions, layered woodlands appear, though, with less density than in equatorial rainforests. Deciduous trees form thinner canopies, allowing more light to penetrate and creating a more open understory. In wetland forests, canopies rise above swampy ground, where cypress-like trees form buttresses to stabilize themselves in saturated soils. Each region shapes its canopy differently, but all share the same principle of vertical stratification. By the Middle Paleocene, the canopy has become a defining feature of terrestrial ecosystems. It is both a product of recovery and a catalyst for diversification, structuring habitats and influencing global processes. The return of forests does more than cloak the earth in green. It transforms the way energy, water, and life move through ecosystems. From the dim understory to the sunlit crown, the canopy represents the complexity and resilience of life after extinction. It is within these layered worlds that many of the epoch's most significant evolutionary experiments take place, setting the course for the future of mammals, birds, and plants. The return of dense canopies in equatorial regions and mixed forests in temperate belts is only part of the Paleocene story. Across the continents, freshwater systems expand into a vital network of rivers, lakes, and wetlands that shape both landscapes and ecosystems. These waterways, swollen by heavy Paleocene rainfall and runoff from rising mountains, spread into broad floodplains, meandering channels, and swampy lowlands. Their slow-moving currents deposit sediments across valleys, building fertile soils that nourish forests and sustain a rich variety of life. Unlike the turbulent marine recoveries of earlier times, freshwater systems serve as sheltered refuges, offering stability and resources to plants and animals alike. Rivers during the Paleocene often flow more gently than those of today, their channels wider, and their banks less constrained by human alteration. Seasonal flooding is common, replenishing nutrients across plains and creating mosaics of habitats. Flooded forests rich in organic matter harbour amphibians, insects, and small reptiles. Over time, as floods recede, oxbow lakes form in abandoned meanders, creating calm basins filled with aquatic vegetation. These habitats, connected yet distinct, become centres of ecological productivity. Fossil deposits in these ancient floodplains preserve abundant remains of plants and animals, documenting the intertwined histories of rivers and life. Wetlands spread across low-lying areas, particularly in regions where rainfall is abundant. These swamps and marshes, filled with cypress-like trees, ferns and horsetails, accumulate vast amounts of organic matter. Decaying vegetation builds peat layers that compress into coal, recording the persistence of lush, waterlogged forests. Insects swarm in these environments, feeding on leaves, detritus, and each other. Early mammals forage along swamp margins, finding both food and protection in dense vegetation. Birds, many of them large and flightless, stalk shallows for fish, and amphibians connecting aquatic and terrestrial food webs. The richness of wetlands lies not only in diversity, but also in their role as cradles for evolutionary experimentation. Lakes form in basins carved by tectonic subsidence, or left by retreating inland seas. Some are shallow and ephemeral, others deep and long-lived. Their waters, warmed by greenhouse conditions, support algae and plankton, which in turn sustain fish and aquatic invertebrates. Fossil fish from Paleocene lake deposits show diversification into new forms, adapting to calm, nutrient-rich waters. Crocodilian relatives inhabit lake margins, their semi-aquatic lifestyle well suited to the abundant prey. Amphibians also thrive, from small frogs to larger salamander-like species, taking advantage of the moist conditions that extend far beyond the tropics. These lakes become nodes of biodiversity within landscapes otherwise dominated by forests. Freshwater systems influence vegetation profoundly. Along rivers, gallery forests form corridors of dense growth that extend into drier regions. These green ribbons connect ecosystems, allowing animals to migrate between habitats. In floodplains, periodic disturbance from flooding ensures high turnover of vegetation, preventing any one species from dominating. This disturbance regime fosters diversity as plants, with different strategies compete for space and light. Some species germinate quickly after floods, while others endure in seed banks until conditions favour their growth. In wetlands, trees adapt to waterlogged soils by developing buttressed trunks and pneumatophores specialised roots that allow them to breathe in oxygen-poor environments. Such adaptations record the intimate connection between vegetation and water. The hydrological cycle itself is reinforced by forests and wetlands. Transpiration from broadleaf trees increases atmospheric humidity, feeding local rainfall and stabilizing river flows. Evaporation from lakes and marshes adds to this effect, ensuring that water recycles efficiently within regions. The abundance of moisture creates a feedback loop. Water sustains vegetation, and vegetation sustains water availability. In the Paleocene greenhouse climate, this loop strengthens, helping to maintain the planet's green and wet character. Animal life in freshwater habitats reflects the stability and productivity of these systems. Insects, particularly dragonflies and mosquitoes, breed in standing waters, their larvae feeding on detritus and small organisms. Fish occupy both rivers and lakes, with species adapted to different niches from bottom-feeding scavengers to active predators. Amphibians take advantage of both aquatic and terrestrial resources, serving as prey for larger animals, while also consuming abundant insects. Reptiles, especially crocodilians, expand their ranges in the Paleocene, reaching high latitudes where mild climates allow their survival. Their dominance in river systems reflects both the warmth of the epoch and the ecological opportunities provided by wetlands and lakes. Birds, too, play a prominent role in freshwater ecosystems. Large predatory forms such as the giant flightless species that emerge in South America hunt fish, amphibians, and small mammals along rivers and lake shores. Wading birds exploit shallows, probing mud for invertebrates. Smaller arboreal birds nest in trees near water, feeding on insects that swarm above rivers and marshes. This diversity reflects the interdependence of water, and forest rivers carve pathways through the land, while trees provide shelter and nesting sites along their banks. The boundary between aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems is blurred, with energy and nutrients flowing freely across it. Fossil deposits from Paleocene freshwater systems preserve these interconnections vividly. Plant remains, including leaves, seeds, and wood, accumulate alongside fish bones, amphibian skeletons, and insect wings. In some cases, volcanic ash layers bury lakes, rapidly preserving delicate details of aquatic life. These Lagerstätten sites of exceptional preservation offer snapshots of entire communities, showing how vegetation, invertebrates, vertebrates, and microbes interact within a single ecosystem. Such records are crucial for reconstructing the complexity of Paleocene freshwater habitats, underscoring their importance in the broader recovery of life. Geologically, rivers and wetlands also record the influence of tectonics. As mountains rise, rivers carve new valleys and deliver sediments downstream. These sediments build deltas along coasts, expanding habitats for estuarine life. Inland basins capture fine clays and silts, creating fertile floodplains that support forests and wetlands. The dynamic interaction between tectonic uplift erosion and sedimentation ensures that freshwater systems are constantly reshaped. Life adapts to these changes, moving with shifting channels and exploiting new lakes as they appear. This dynamism adds to the resilience of ecosystems, as species accustomed to disturbance are well suited to recovery. By the Middle Paleocene, freshwater systems are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth. They provide stability in a world still reorganizing after mass extinction, offering both resources and refuges. Rivers connect continents, wetlands, anchor biodiversity, and lakes foster specialization. These systems integrate with forests and oceans, binding the biosphere into a cohesive whole. Their role is more than local. By recycling nutrients, sequestering carbon, and moderating climates, they help maintain the greenhouse balance of the planet. The Paleocene world is often imagined as a planet of forests, but it is equally a planet of water. Freshwater landscapes with their swamps, floodplains, and meandering rivers are central to the epoch's recovery. They nurture plants, shelter animals, and record the interplay of climate geology and biology. In their quiet flow and seasonal rhythms, rivers and wetlands sustain the pulse of life, ensuring that ecosystems can expand and diversify across the continents. These watery landscapes are the connective tissue of the Paleocene, linking forests, mountains, and seas in a world reborn. Among the most striking features of the Paleocene world is the rise of giant birds that assume roles once filled by reptiles. With the extinction of non-avian dinosaurs, many niches for large terrestrial predators and omnivores lie vacant. Birds descended from small theropod ancestors that survived the catastrophe expand into these openings with remarkable speed. In several regions, especially South America and parts of Europe, large flightless species emerge, some towering above most mammals of their time. These birds, powerful in build and equipped with strong beaks and legs, dominate ecosystems where reptiles had once ruled. Their presence is a reminder that recovery does not simply restore the past, but creates new evolutionary pathways. In South America, a lineage that will later be known as the terror birds begins to appear. While their most famous representatives arise later, their Paleocene ancestors already display adaptations for terrestrial predation. Standing more than 2 meters tall, these birds possess long, muscular legs capable of swift pursuit. Their beaks, often hooked or sharply edged, serve as weapons for striking prey. Fossil evidence from sites in Argentina and nearby regions reveals that they occupy the role of apex predators in ecosystems where large carnivorous mammals are still rare or absent. Small herbivorous mammals, reptiles, and other birds fall within their diets, making these giants a defining feature of Paleocene food webs. Europe too harbours large flightless birds during this epoch. In coastal and island environments, species such as Gastornis grow to imposing sizes. Unlike their South American counterparts, these birds are not clearly predatory. Their massive deep beaks suggest powerful crushing abilities, possibly used to crack seeds or fruits. Some interpretations propose they may have been omnivorous, consuming both plant and animal matter, while others argue for herbivory. Regardless of diet, their size and strength ensure that they dominate their habitats, deterring predators and competing effectively with mammals. Their presence underscores the ecological opportunities available to birds in the absence of larger reptiles. Beyond the giants, birds in general diversify rapidly during the Paleocene. The ancestors of modern groups such as owls, hawks, ducks, and shorebirds appear in the fossil record, though often in primitive forms. Some adapt to forest canopies, feeding on insects and fruits, while others exploit wetlands, rivers, and coastlines. The recovery of aquatic habitats encourages the spread of wading and diving birds, many of which resemble their modern relatives in ecology, if not in exact anatomy. This diversification demonstrates how quickly avian lineages seize opportunities, filling ecological roles across nearly every environment. Flightless forms, however, are especially significant because of their dominance in size. In a world without large carnivorous dinosaurs and before mammals achieve substantial body mass, giant birds stand out as the most imposing terrestrial animals. Their expansion is supported by the greenhouse climate, which allows ecosystems to produce abundant vegetation and prey year-round. In high-productivity forests and wetlands, large animals find the resources necessary to sustain themselves. Birds, with their efficient respiratory systems and rapid growth rates, capitalize on these conditions, outpacing mammals in the early stages of size increase. The anatomy of these birds reflects their specialized lifestyles. Strong leg bones and large attachment points for muscles indicate powerful strides. Reduced wings, often incapable of sustained flight, mark their commitment to terrestrial living. Beak shapes vary widely from sharp hooks to broad, crushing forms, illustrating dietary diversity. Some fossil tracks preserved in Paleocene sediments reveal their movement across floodplains and riverbanks, evidence of their integration into the daily rhythms of ecosystems. These traces alongside skeletal remains provide insights into their behavior and interactions with other organisms. The dominance of large birds also influences other animals. Mammals living alongside them adapt behaviors to avoid predation or competition. Small herbivores develop agility and nocturnal habits, seeking to escape the keen senses and speed of avian hunters. Insectivorous mammals exploit niches less accessible to birds, such as burrows or dense understory cover. Reptiles, though reduced in diversity compared to earlier times, continue to thrive in aquatic habitats, largely avoiding direct conflict with terrestrial birds. These dynamics create a new balance in food webs, with birds as central figures in many regions. The fossil record of bird diversity in the Paleocene is enriched by sites that preserve delicate bones and even feathers. Fine sediments in lake beds and volcanic ash layers occasionally capture these remains in detail. Feather impressions show that many species retain plumage similar to modern birds, with adaptations for insulation display, and in flying forms aerodynamics. The presence of downy feathers in both large and small species highlights the importance of insulation in a greenhouse world where nights can still be cool, especially at higher latitudes. These details flesh out the picture of avian life in a world reshaped by extinction. Birds also play critical ecological roles beyond predation and herbivory. Their movement across landscapes aids in seed dispersal, especially for flowering plants producing fleshy fruits. Seeds consumed and later excreted by birds germinate in new locations, extending the ranges of plant species. This mutualistic relationship between birds and angiosperms strengthens during the Paleocene, reinforcing the dominance of flowering plants in terrestrial ecosystems. Insects pollinate flowers at close range, while birds carry seeds over longer distances, ensuring both local and regional success of vegetation. This integration of plants, insects, and birds accelerates the recovery and diversification of forests. The expansion of avian life into new forms illustrates a key principle of the Paleocene extinction reshapes opportunity. The loss of large reptiles leaves open roles that birds are uniquely poised to fill. Their lightweight skeletons, high metabolic rates, and capacity for both flight and terrestrial adaptation enable rapid diversification. While mammals steadily expand in diversity and size during the epoch, it is birds that first seize dominance at larger body scales. Their giant forms are symbolic of a world experimenting with new solutions to ecological challenges. By the end of the Paleocene, birds occupy nearly every terrestrial and aquatic niche, from towering giants stalking floodplains to small insectivores flitting through canopies. Their success is tied to the broader environmental stability of the epoch warm climates, abundant forests and productive wetlands. Though later epochs will see mammals rise to greater prominence in size and diversity, the Paleocene belongs in no small part to birds. Their dominance is etched into the fossil record through bones, feathers, and tracks, all testifying to the central role they play in rebuilding ecosystems. The reign of these avian giants alongside their smaller relatives defines an important stage in post-extinction recovery. They represent the capacity of survivors not just to endure, but to expand into forms previously unimaginable. In their size, strength, and diversity, birds embody the transformation of the Paleocene landscape, from one emptied by catastrophe to one filled once again with complexity and life. While birds rise to prominence in Paleocene ecosystems, mammals quietly begin a trajectory that will reshape the future of terrestrial life. In the aftermath of the extinction, mammals are small, most no larger than modern rats or rabbits. Yet the absence of large reptilian competitors opens pathways for expansion. Across forests, floodplains, and wetlands, new mammalian groups appear, some experimenting with increased body size, others with novel diets and locomotion. Though still modest compared to the giants that will come later, these early forms represent the first steps toward large mammalian herbivores and omnivores exploring body plans suited to the Paleocene greenhouse world. Among the most notable of these groups are the condylarths, an informal collection of primitive ungulate-like mammals. Their teeth suggest herbivorous or omnivorous diets, with low-crowned molars adapted for chewing leaves and fruits. Some condylarths grow larger than earlier mammals, reaching the size of small dogs or pigs. Their limbs, though not yet specialized, show adaptations for more efficient walking, indicating an early commitment to terrestrial grazing and browsing. These animals spread widely, occupying forests and open woodlands, and they serve as ancestors to later ungulates that will diversify in subsequent epochs. In the Paleocene, they represent the beginnings of larger mammalian herbivory. Another group, the pantodonts, appears in the early Paleocene and becomes one of the first truly large-bodied mammalian lineages. Species such as Pantolambda grow to the size of a sheep with robust bodies and broad teeth suited to eating a variety of plant material. By the middle Paleocene, pantodonts expand into diverse forms, including Coryphodon, which inhabits wetlands and floodplains. These animals are among the first mammals to weigh several hundred kilograms, filling roles once held by medium-sized herbivorous dinosaurs. Their presence demonstrates that within a few million years of the extinction, mammals begin to occupy niches for large plant eaters, shaping vegetation dynamics and food webs. The Taeniodonts, another lineage, develop striking specializations. With powerful jaws and chisel-like teeth, they are thought to have been diggers and root eaters exploiting underground food sources. Their robust claws suggest they could tear into soil or woody material, accessing resources unavailable to many other animals. By diversifying in feeding strategies, mammals reduce direct competition, carving out separate ecological roles within Paleocene ecosystems. Such experiments are hallmarks of the epoch, where recovery creates opportunities for innovation. The rise of larger mammals has consequences for ecosystems. As herbivores, they influence forest structure by consuming leaves, shoots, and fruits. Their movements open paths through dense undergrowth, creating microhabitats for smaller animals. Their dung recycles nutrients, fertilizing soils and feeding insects. By shaping vegetation and nutrient cycles, these mammals begin to act as ecosystem engineers, though at smaller scales than their successors in later epochs. Predation pressures on these animals remain limited, as large carnivorous mammals have not yet evolved. Instead, they face threats primarily from giant birds and, in some regions, crocodilians. This unusual balance of power marks the Paleocene as a distinctive interval in ecological history. Fossil evidence from North America and Europe reveals the presence of multituberculates, an ancient group of mammals that persists into the Paleocene. These rodent-like animals with complex teeth adapted for gnawing and grinding thrive in forests and woodlands. They occupy niches similar to later rodents, feeding on seeds, nuts, and vegetation. Their persistence and abundance suggest they are highly successful during the Paleocene, though they will eventually decline as true rodents diversify. Their story is one of continuity as well as change, bridging the ecosystems of the Cretaceous with those of the Cenozoic. In Asia, early relatives of hoofed mammals diversify, while in South America unique groups evolve in relative isolation. The separation of continents promotes regional variation, with mammalian lineages evolving independently in different parts of the world. This geographic separation ensures that Paleocene ecosystems are not uniform, but instead display distinctive assemblages of mammals, birds, and reptiles shaped by local conditions. Over time, continental drift and land bridges will allow exchanges, but in the Paleocene, regional distinctiveness is a prominent feature of mammalian evolution. The fossil record also captures the gradual increase in mammalian size during the Paleocene. While many species remain small, adapted to insectivory or omnivory, others steadily grow larger. This size increase, known as Cope's rule, reflects the advantages of a larger body mass in terms of energy storage, defense, and expanded dietary options. Larger mammals can consume lower quality plant material and travel farther in search of resources. In the resource-rich greenhouse world, these advantages drive the steady expansion of body size, laying foundations for the giants of later epochs. Teeth provide especially valuable evidence of dietary change. Paleocene mammal fossils often preserve detailed dental structures revealing what animals ate and how they processed food. Low-crowned molars suggest diets of soft leaves and fruits, while more robust teeth indicate tougher vegetation. The appearance of grinding surfaces in some lineages foreshadows the later dominance of grass-eating ungulates, though grasses themselves remain rare in the Paleocene. Jaw mechanics too evolve in response to diets, with some mammals developing more powerful bites, and others specializing in side-to-side chewing. These adaptations reflect the dynamic interplay between vegetation and herbivores as forests recover and diversify. Skeletal remains show changes in locomotion as well. While many Paleocene mammals retain sprawling generalized postures, some begin to exhibit more upright stances and efficient gaits. These changes are subtle but significant, marking a gradual shift toward the more cursorial body plans of later ungulates and carnivores. Arboreal adaptations also appear in smaller mammals with flexible joints and grasping extremities suited to life in the canopy. This range of locomotor strategies underscores the ecological experimentation of the epoch, where mammals spread into every available niche. The relative scarcity of mammalian predators in the Paleocene is notable. Most carnivorous niches are filled by birds and reptiles, leaving mammals to dominate herbivory and omnivory. Nonetheless, some mammal lineages begin to explore carnivory, developing sharper teeth and more agile bodies. These early forms remain small hunting insects and small vertebrates, but they represent the first steps toward the specialized carnivores of later epochs. The balance of ecosystems is unusual. Herbivorous and omnivorous mammals expand rapidly, while predatory mammals lag behind, leaving ecological dominance of carnivory to other groups. By the end of the Paleocene, mammals are far more diverse, and in some cases far larger than they were at the boundary. They remain secondary to birds in terms of sheer dominance of size, but their potential is clear. Through condylarths, pantodonts, taniodonts, multituberculates, and other lineages, mammals test body plans and strategies that will shape the future of terrestrial life. Their expansion illustrates both the opportunities created by extinction and the adaptability of survivors. In forests, wetlands, and plains, mammals take their place alongside birds as co-architects of Paleocene ecosystems. There rise a slow but steady process that will continue to build momentum in epochs to come. Within the shelter of Paleocene forests, another group of mammals takes important early steps that will echo through evolutionary history. These are the primate-grade mammals, small arboreal species that begin to show adaptations for life in trees. Their fossils are fragmentary but significant, found in deposits across North America, Europe, and Asia. They're not yet true primates, but their anatomy suggests a shift toward grasping hands and feet, forward-facing eyes, and increased reliance on vision. In the warm, fruit-rich canopies of the Paleocene, these animals find both resources and safety, laying the groundwork for a lineage that will eventually include humans. The early representatives of this group are often classified among the Plesiadapi forms, a diverse assemblage of small mammals with varying dental and skeletal traits. Many are squirrel-sized with long tails and flexible limbs. Their teeth suggest diets based on fruits, seeds, and insects, reflecting the abundance of resources in Paleocene forests. Some species develop enlarged incisors for gnawing, while others retain more generalized dentition. The diversity of forms within this group highlights the experimentation that characterizes the epoch, with different lineages exploring alternative strategies for arboreal life. The shift toward arboreality is significant in evolutionary terms. Trees provide abundant food but demand specialized locomotion. Animals must be able to grasp branches' balance while moving and leap between gaps. Evidence from fossil limb bones shows that some Plesiadapi forms develop elongated fingers and opposable thumbs, allowing them to grip effectively. Flexible ankles and wrists further support climbing. These features foreshadow the adaptations of later primates, though in the Paleocene they're still incipient. Arboreal life offers protection from ground-based predators, especially the large birds that dominate terrestrial ecosystems, and this refuge likely supports the survival and diversification of primate-like mammals. Vision becomes increasingly important in these habitats. Forward-facing eyes seen in some Plesiadapi forms allow for depth perception, a crucial trait for navigating three-dimensional environments. While not all early forms possess this trait, its emergence marks a key evolutionary shift. Enhanced vision supports not only locomotion, but also the detection of ripe fruits and insects among foliage. The gradual emphasis on sight over smell, a hallmark of primate evolution, begins here in the Paleocene canopies. These subtle changes in sensory adaptation set the stage for future evolutionary trajectories. The relationship between these mammals and flowering plants is profound. As angiosperms diversify, they produce fleshy fruits and seeds that attract animals as dispersers. Arboreal mammals feeding on fruits carry seeds away from parent trees, dispersing them across the forest. In turn, plants provide a reliable food source, encouraging mammals to specialize in frugivory. This mutualism strengthens both groups, linking their evolutionary paths. Fossil evidence of seeds with thick protective coats suggests adaptations to survive passage through digestive systems, an early indication of plant-animal coevolution. The Paleocene canopy becomes not only a refuge but also a dynamic arena of interaction between plants and mammals. Insects add another layer to this system. Many Plesiadapi forms are insectivorous or omnivorous, taking advantage of the abundant insect life that thrives in flowering forests. This diet provides protein and supports small body sizes, allowing these mammals to reproduce quickly and maintain populations. Their activity in turn influences insect populations and contributes to the balance of ecosystems. The interplay of fruits, insects, and arboreal mammals exemplifies the complexity of food webs within Paleocene forests. The fossil record of Plesiadapiforms is patchy, but widespread, indicating that they are among the most successful mammalian groups of the Paleocene. In North America, genera such as Purgatorius are among the earliest known examples, appearing soon after the extinction. In Europe and Asia, related forms diversify into a variety of shapes and sizes, suggesting rapid radiation. By the end of the Paleocene, dozens of species exist, filling niches from insectivory to frugivory. Their success reflects both ecological opportunity and adaptability, as they exploit the vertical dimension of forests more effectively than many other mammals. The evolutionary experiments of the Paleocene are not all successful. Some Plesiadapiform lineages disappear by the Eocene, replaced by more advanced primates with greater specializations. Yet the significance of these early forms lies not in their long-term survival, but in the groundwork they establish. Traits such as grasping extremities, improved vision, and arboreal locomotion begin here, setting evolutionary trends that will be refined later. The Paleocene thus represents the opening chapter of primate evolution, a quiet but critical step in mammalian history. The ecological roles of these mammals extend beyond their own survival. By dispersing seeds, controlling insects, and serving as prey for birds and reptiles, they integrate into forest ecosystems as key components. Their interactions shape the dynamics of vegetation and food webs, reinforcing the importance of forests as centers of diversity. Even as larger mammals explore herbivory on the ground, primate-grade forms claim the canopy, ensuring that every layer of the forest is inhabited. The vertical partitioning of habitats reduces competition and allows multiple lineages to thrive simultaneously. The resilience of these animals also reflects broader climatic conditions. The Paleocene greenhouse climate, with its stable warmth and abundant rainfall, provides ideal conditions for forest growth. Without severe winters or prolonged droughts, resources remain consistent, supporting arboreal specialists. Seasonal cycles of fruiting and flowering ensure that food supplies fluctuate but never vanish entirely. These conditions favor animals that can exploit diverse resources, and Plesiadapiforms embody this adaptability. Their evolutionary success is thus both a product of their traits and of the environment that nurtures them. By the close of the Paleocene, primate-grade mammals are well established across northern continents. They remain small, overshadowed in size by pantodonts and other large herbivores, and in predatory power by giant birds. Yet their importance lies not in dominance, but in persistence. They carve out a stable place in ecosystems, ensuring continuity through time. Their story illustrates how small, subtle changes can carry great evolutionary weight. In the quiet shelter of Paleocene forests, a lineage begins its ascent, one branch of which will eventually transform the course of life on Earth. As primate-like mammals take to the trees, and larger herbivores expand across floodplains, another evolutionary pathway unfolds in the Paleocene, the rise of mammalian carnivores. These early predators are not yet the specialized hunters of later epochs, but they begin to experiment with sharp teeth, agile bodies, and strategies for pursuing prey. Their story is one of modest beginnings, yet it marks the start of a lineage that will eventually reshape terrestrial ecosystems by rebalancing the relationship between predator and prey. In the Paleocene, however, carnivory among mammals remains tentative, secondary to the dominance of birds and reptiles in predatory roles. One of the most important groups to emerge during this time are the creodonts, primitive carnivorous mammals that appear in both North America and Eurasia. Their teeth are distinctive, with slicing molars adapted for shearing flesh. Unlike the more advanced carnivorans of later epochs, creodonts retain generalized skeletal structures, but they clearly show adaptations for predation. Some species are small, no larger than foxes, while others grow to the size of wolves or small bears. They feed on insects, small mammals, reptiles, and carrion, gradually expanding their role in ecosystems. Their rise signals that mammals are beginning to contest the ecological space of carnivory, even if they do not yet dominate it. Other groups experiment with carnivory in less direct ways. Some condylarths, though primarily herbivorous, adopt omnivorous diets that include small animals. Teniodonts known for digging may consume insects or small vertebrates along with roots and plants. These opportunistic feeders bridge the gap between herbivores and predators, occupying flexible niches in Paleocene food webs. Their presence reflects the diversity of strategies available to mammals in a world still in recovery. With ecosystems not yet saturated, experimentation is rewarded, and dietary generalists thrive alongside more specialized forms. The anatomical evidence of these early carnivores is telling. Jaw structures show increased emphasis on vertical biting power, while teeth sharpen into cusp patterns suited for slicing rather than grinding. Limb bones reveal gradual adaptations for speed and agility, though most Paleocene carnivores remain relatively slow compared to later hunters. Their reliance on ambush and scavenging likely exceeds that of pursuit hunting. Dense forests and wetlands provide cover for such strategies, allowing predators to stalk prey in close quarters. In open landscapes where visibility is greater, birds still hold the upper hand as dominant hunters. Birds of prey, including giant flightless forms, remain the most formidable terrestrial predators. Mammals that venture into herbivory or omnivory often face threats from avian giants capable of seizing them. Crocodilians also retain dominance in aquatic and riparian zones, ambushing animals that approach rivers and wetlands. In this predatory hierarchy, mammals are still minor players occupying secondary or opportunistic roles. Yet their persistence and diversification foreshadow the shift to come as evolutionary pressures gradually refine their abilities. The fossil record captures these developments most clearly in teeth. Paleocene strata contain an array of mammalian dental forms from low-crowned grinders to sharp-edged shears. Each tooth is a record of diet, and in carnivorous species the emergence of blade-like molars is unmistakable. These teeth designed to cut meat represent a functional shift that places mammals firmly on the path toward predatory specialization. Though still less effective than the carnassial teeth of later carnivorans, they signal an evolutionary experiment that will continue into the Eocene. Carnivorous mammals also play crucial roles in balancing ecosystems. By preying on small herbivores and omnivores, they regulate populations and prevent unchecked growth. This balance maintains vegetation and ensures resources are not exhausted. Scavenging behavior further integrates them into ecological cycles as they recycle carrion and return nutrients to the environment. Even at modest sizes, these animals influence food webs in ways that contribute to overall stability. Their interactions with birds and reptiles reflect the transitional nature of the Paleocene, where multiple lineages share predatory roles without a single group holding dominance. Evidence from North America shows that some early carnivorous mammals are already experimenting with larger body sizes. Fossils of genera such as Archaea suggest animals capable of preying on mid-sized herbivores, marking a step beyond small prey. In Europe, similar forms evolve occupying niches alongside giant birds like Gastornis. These coexisting predators demonstrate parallel strategies, mammals using teeth and agility, birds using beaks and strength. The coexistence of both highlights the unique dynamics of Paleocene ecosystems, where evolutionary pathways overlap rather than exclude one another. The rise of mammalian carnivores also affects behavior in prey species. Small herbivores adopt nocturnality, seeking refuge in the dark when birds are less active. Arboreal adaptations increase as climbing provides escape from terrestrial predators. Burrowing becomes more common among insectivores and rodents, shielding them from both mammals and birds. These defensive strategies reflect the pressures imposed by carnivory, even in its early stages. The interplay between predator and prey drives diversification on both sides, shaping evolutionary trajectories across ecosystems. Climate and vegetation influence carnivory as well. Dense forests favor ambush strategies, while wetlands offer opportunities for opportunistic feeding. Floodplains with abundant herbivores provide resources for scavengers. The widespread productivity of the Paleocene greenhouse climate ensures that prey populations remain stable, supporting the expansion of predators. This abundance allows multiple predatory strategies to coexist, from giant birds on the ground to small mammalian hunters in the undergrowth. The richness of habitats ensures that no single lineage monopolizes carnivory, maintaining diversity across groups. By the end of the Paleocene, mammalian carnivores are established but not yet dominant. They represent an expanding branch of mammalian evolution, exploring roles in ecosystems that had been emptied by extinction. Their rise is gradual, marked by small increments in body size, sharper teeth, and improved agility. While they remain overshadowed by avian and reptilian predators, their persistence ensures that the foundation of future dominance is in place. The Paleocene is thus both a testing ground and a transition where carnivory emerges as a significant force among mammals but awaits further refinement in epochs to come. The mammals of the Paleocene expand not only in size and diet but also in physiology, adjusting their internal biology to the greenhouse conditions that define the epoch. With average global temperatures several degrees warmer than today, and forests extending even into polar regions, mammals adapt their metabolic strategies, thermoregulation, and reproductive systems to match this new world. These changes are subtle in the fossil record, yet the evidence drawn from bone structure, teeth, and comparative anatomy reveals how life retools itself to thrive in a climate that offers both opportunity and challenge. Metabolism is central to these adjustments. Mammals as warm-blooded animals rely on high metabolic rates to maintain stable body temperatures. In the Paleocene, greenhouse extreme cold is absent, but the stability of warmth does not lessen the demands of endothermy. Instead, it allows mammals to explore new ranges of body size. Small mammals retain rapid metabolisms, enabling agility and nocturnal activity, while larger herbivores like pantodonts begin to slow their metabolic rates relative to their mass. This scaling effect permits the growth of animals to sizes previously unattainable in mammals, since consistent warmth and abundant vegetation support their energy needs. The interplay between metabolism and climate underpins this size expansion, marking a turning point in mammalian evolution. Thermoregulation in a warm world requires different strategies than in cooler epochs. With fewer extremes of cold, insulation becomes less critical, though fur remains essential for small mammals to regulate heat loss. Larger mammals living in shaded forests and wetlands likely reduce insulation, relying on sheer body mass to buffer temperature fluctuations. Sweat glands, though difficult to trace in fossils, may begin to play roles in dissipating excess heat, especially in larger-bodied forms. In polar forests, where long periods of darkness alternate with continuous summer light, mammals adapt not to freezing temperatures, but to variations in resource availability. Seasonal fat storage and altered activity cycles help them survive these rhythms. The circulatory systems of mammals also reflect adaptations to greenhouse conditions. Larger animals require efficient delivery of oxygen and nutrients, and their bone structures suggest robust cardiovascular support. The abundance of oxygen generated by expanding forests may aid this adaptation, easing the burden on respiratory systems. In small mammals, high surface area lungs and rapid heart rates allow sustained activity in dense forests where agility is vital. The physiological flexibility of mammals proves crucial, allowing them to thrive in habitats ranging from swampy lowlands to high-latitude woodlands. Reproduction in the Paleocene also reflects environmental stability. With abundant vegetation and consistent climates, many mammals adopt strategies that favor frequent reproduction and shorter gestation times. Small mammals in particular reproduce rapidly, ensuring population resilience in the face of predation by birds and reptiles. Larger mammals, by contrast, begin to shift toward longer gestation and fewer offspring strategies that rely on stable conditions to ensure survival. Fossil evidence of bone growth patterns suggests that young of larger species grow quickly, reaching functional maturity within a short time frame to reduce vulnerability. These life history strategies illustrate how mammals balance survival with reproductive investment in a greenhouse world. Teeth and jaws reveal further physiological adaptation, reflecting dietary demands shaped by vegetation. In pantodonts and condylarths, molars evolve broader surfaces for grinding, allowing efficient processing of fibrous plant matter. Toothwear patterns indicate that diets include both soft fruits and tougher leaves, demonstrating dietary flexibility. In insectivorous mammals, sharp cusps and elongated jaws enable efficient capture and processing of arthropods. The diversity of dental forms across Paleocene mammals reflects both ecological variety and physiological adjustments to diet. These adaptations ensure that mammals can exploit a wide spectrum of resources, reinforcing their expansion across ecosystems. Bone tissue provides additional clues to physiology. Microscopic examination of Paleocene mammal bones reveals patterns of growth rings analogous to those seen in modern mammals. These rings suggest relatively fast growth rates in small species and more extended growth in larger forms. Rapid growth is advantageous in ecosystems, with abundant predators reducing the time young animals spend in vulnerable stages. Larger herbivores, however, may invest more in robust skeletons and slower maturation strategies supported by the stability of greenhouse climates. Such physiological balancing acts enable mammals to match their growth to environmental pressures. Adaptations in sensory systems also emerge in response to Paleocene conditions. In dense forests, vision and hearing become critical. Fossil evidence of enlarged eye sockets in some species suggests increasing reliance on sight, especially in arboreal forms. The development of forward-facing eyes in primate-grade mammals represents a profound sensory shift, enabling depth perception in three-dimensional habitats. Enhanced hearing supports nocturnal activity, allowing small mammals to avoid daytime predators and exploit nighttime insect abundance. Olfaction remains strong across many groups, guiding foraging and social interactions. Together, these sensory adaptations reflect the demands of forest life and the opportunities provided by a complex environment. Energy use and dietary specialization also interact with physiology. Omnivores balance high-energy foods like fruits and insects with lower-quality vegetation, ensuring stable energy intake. Herbivores develop fermentation strategies in their digestive tracts, breaking down fibrous plant material more efficiently. Though details of Paleocene digestive anatomy are inferred, rather than directly preserved, comparisons with later mammals suggest that multiple solutions evolved to meet dietary demands. Carnivorous forms, small though they are, refine metabolic systems for bursts of activity, enabling ambush and pursuit within dense vegetation. Each strategy reflects an alignment of physiology with ecological role. Climate stability also supports hibernation and dormancy in some regions. High-latitude mammals may adapt to prolonged darkness by reducing activity during winter months, conserving energy until resources return in summer. Fat storage indicated by skeletal features associated with robust bodies suggest preparation for lean seasons. Such adaptations demonstrate the interplay between physiology and environment, as mammals synchronize internal cycles with external rhythms of light and productivity. The broader physiological picture of Paleocene mammals is one of versatility. They do not yet display the extreme specializations of later epochs, but instead experiment with a wide range of solutions. Warm climates, abundant vegetation, and diverse habitats provide the backdrop for this experimentation. Whether through metabolic scaling, reproductive strategies, sensory shifts, or digestive adaptations, mammals adjust their biology to fit the opportunities and constraints of the Paleocene world. By the close of the epoch, these physiological foundations position mammals for further success. Their ability to regulate body temperature, process varied diets, reproduce flexibly, and exploit sensory information ensures resilience in a dynamic environment. Birds may dominate in size and reptiles in aquatic habitats, but mammals are steadily refining their biology to compete more effectively. The Paleocene is thus not only a time of ecological recovery, but also of internal transformation, as mammals adapt their physiology to a greenhouse Earth, preparing for the evolutionary advances that will follow. The story of the Paleocene does not unfold only at the level of landscapes, forests, or large animals. Beneath these broader patterns lie the details of tissues, bones, and cells, the microscopic evidence that reveals how life adapts in the aftermath of catastrophe. Fossil remains, though often fragmentary, preserve structures fine enough to record growth rates, diets, and ecological pressures. Through these traces, it is possible to reconstruct the biology of plants and animals at a level invisible to the eye but crucial for understanding recovery. In the Paleocene, tissues and microstructures show both continuity with the Cretaceous and innovations suited to a greenhouse world. Plant tissues provide some of the clearest evidence. Fossilized wood from the Paleocene often displays growth rings, a record of seasonal cycles even in warmer climates. These rings are not always as distinct as in modern temperate forests, reflecting the relatively uniform greenhouse conditions, but variations in thickness indicate shifts in rainfall and light. In high-latitude forests where seasonal darkness imposes clear rhythms, growth rings are more pronounced, testifying to annual cycles of activity and dormancy. Microscopic examination of cell walls in fossil wood shows adaptations to moisture with thickened structures in swamp-dwelling species and lighter constructions in those of drier uplands. Leaf cuticles preserved in fine sediments reveal stomata, tiny pores that regulate gas exchange. Their density and distribution reflect atmospheric carbon dioxide levels, providing direct evidence of the greenhouse composition of Paleocene air. Pollen grains examined under microscopes show intricate patterns that identify plant groups with precision. These microfossils, abundant and durable, record the dominance of flowering plants across continents. Some grains are spherical with sculpted walls suited for wind dispersal, while others are sticky and adapted for animal pollinators. The diversity of pollen types indicates complex plant-animal interactions already established in Paleocene ecosystems. Their abundance in sediments demonstrates that forests and wetlands are highly productive seeding landscapes with continuous growth. The microscopic structures of pollen thus capture both evolutionary advancement and ecological success. Animal tissues provide parallel insights. Teeth, often the most durable parts of mammal skeletons, preserve microscopic wear patterns that reveal diets. Under magnification, scratches and pits on enamel surfaces indicate whether an animal fed primarily on leaves, fruits, or harder materials. In pantodonts and condylarths, microwear studies show mixed diets suggesting flexible feeding strategies in varied environments. Small insectivores, by contrast, display sharp cusps with little wear consistent with consuming soft-bodied prey. These fine details illuminate daily life in Paleocene ecosystems, translating fossilized structures into evidence of behavior. Bone tissues also record growth and metabolism. Thin sections of Paleocene mammal bones reveal patterns of vascularization networks of microscopic canals that carry blood during growth. Highly vascularized bones indicate rapid growth consistent with the need for small mammals to mature quickly in predator-rich environments. Larger mammals display slower, more sustained growth visible in denser bone textures. In some cases, lines of arrested growth appear, marking seasonal or environmental stresses. These microstructures link physiology to climate, showing how animals adjust to cycles of resource abundance and scarcity. Reptiles, particularly crocodilian relatives that thrive in Paleocene wetlands, also preserve microstructural evidence. Their bones show cyclical growth patterns tied to seasonal changes even in a greenhouse world. The presence of these cycles confirms that while global temperatures are warm, local environments still impose fluctuations. Scutes' bony plates in their skin retain detailed textures that reflect both protective functions and thermoregulation. These tissues illustrate how reptiles persist in diverse habitats, integrating into the new ecosystems with resilience. Birds, though their hollow bones are less often preserved, contribute important microstructural evidence through feathers and eggshells. Feather impressions show barbules and shafts consistent with insulation and display, while chemical residues indicate pigmentation. Eggshell fragments examined microscopically reveal pore patterns that control gas exchange during incubation. These patterns vary between ground nesting and tree nesting species, providing clues to behavior. In giant flightless birds, thickened shells suggest adaptation to large eggs laid in open habitats. Such microscale evidence links reproduction and survival strategies directly to the broader ecology of the Paleocene. Invertebrates also leave traces at the tissue level. Insects preserved in amber display exquisite details of wings, eyes, and mouth parts. These structures reveal evolutionary experimentation, such as proboscises adapted for sipping nectar or mandibles designed for chewing leaves. Antennae record sensory adaptations, while compound eyes illustrate adjustments to forest-like conditions. Fungal hyphae are sometimes trapped alongside insects, demonstrating the interconnectedness of microecosystems. These delicate tissues frozen in resin capture interactions that rarely fossilize elsewhere, offering glimpses of canopy life at a microscopic scale. Soils provide further microstructural evidence of recovery. Thin sections of Paleocene paleosols reveal root traces, fungal networks, and mineral layers altered by organic activity. The presence of mycorrhizal associations, symbiotic fungi connected to roots, is inferred from soil structures and preserved spores. These networks enhance nutrient uptake, supporting the rapid spread of forests. Microscale features such as clay coatings and iron nodules record cycles of wetting and drying, reflecting hydrological rhythms. These details connect the unseen world of soil microbes and fungi to the grand narrative of Paleocene recovery. The study of isotopes within tissues adds another dimension. Carbon isotopes in tooth enamel reflect dietary sources, distinguishing between plants with different photosynthetic pathways. Oxygen isotopes track water intake and climatic conditions, revealing the environments in which animals lived. These chemical signatures, preserved at the atomic scale, turn tissues into environmental recorders. Through them, it is possible to reconstruct rainfall patterns, vegetation types, and even migration behaviours. In the Paleocene, such data confirm the consistency of greenhouse climates and the broad availability of vegetation aligning microscale evidence with macroscale reconstructions. At the cellular level, fossils rarely preserve direct evidence, yet exceptional sites yield traces of original structures. Plant cells preserved in permineralized wood display nuclei, and organelles offering insights into physiology. In rare cases, soft tissues from animals contain outlines of muscle fibers or blood vessels preserved by mineralization. These exceptional finds, though uncommon, highlight the continuity of life's basic building blocks through deep time. They remind us that the tissues of Paleocene organisms, though transformed into stone, once pulsed with the same cellular machinery that sustains life today. By examining tissues and cells, the Paleocene world emerges not only as a landscape of forests and rivers, but also as a tapestry woven from microscopic threads. Every growth, ring, enamel, scratch, and pollen wall records the interplay of climate ecology and biology. These details reveal how life not only survived, but adjusted its internal workings to new conditions. From plant cuticles responding to greenhouse gases to mammalian bones, reflecting rapid growth tissues preserve the intimate dialogue between organisms and environment. The microscale record of the Paleocene underscores that recovery from mass extinction is written at every level, from continents drifting to cells dividing. It is in this fine detail that resilience is most visible: forests rebuilt leaf by leaf, animals adapting tooth by tooth, and ecosystems stitched together through the invisible work of microbes and tissues. These small-scale processes, multiplied across millions of individuals, form the foundation upon which the epoch's greater diversity rests. By the later stages of the Paleocene, the planet settles into a state of stability that is striking in its contrast to the chaos that followed the Great Extinction. The skies are clear, the oceans circulate, and forests blanket the continents. Ecosystems have diversified into intricate networks, and the balance between atmosphere, land, water, and life reaches a point of relative equilibrium. This is not a return to the Cretaceous, but the establishment of a new world defined by greenhouse warmth, extensive vegetation, and evolving lineages of birds and mammals. It is a world distinct in character, one that will persist until new shifts in climate and tectonics reshape it again. The late Paleocene climate remains consistently warm. Temperatures across latitudes are high enough to sustain forests even in polar regions, and no permanent ice caps exist. Rainfall is abundant, supporting wetlands and rivers across continents. Seasonal variations occur especially in high-latitude forests, where long nights alternate with continuous summer daylight, but severe cold is absent. This climatic uniformity allows ecosystems to flourish across vast ranges, with plants and animals spreading widely without the barriers imposed by glaciation or deserts. Stability defines the epoch, enabling long-term ecological development. Vegetation in the late Paleocene reaches peak abundance. Angiosperms dominate forests, with palms extending into temperate regions and deciduous trees flourishing at high latitudes. Conifers and southern beeches remain significant, particularly in the southern hemisphere, but flowering plants hold the central role in shaping ecosystems. Forest canopies are tall and dense in tropical zones, layered into multiple strata, filled with vines, epiphytes, and diverse understory plants. In temperate and subtropical regions, mixed forests thrive, while wetlands host cypress-like trees and aquatic vegetation. The global green cover is nearly continuous, creating habitats of extraordinary complexity. Animal communities reflect this richness. Large flightless birds occupy apex roles on land, shaping prey populations and interacting with mammalian herbivores. Predatory mammals, though smaller, are present in growing numbers, while herbivorous lineages diversify further into pantodonts, condylarths, and taniodonts. Primate-grade mammals continue to exploit canopies feeding on fruits and insects, and multituberculates remain abundant in forest understories. Crocodilians and turtles thrive in rivers and wetlands, extending even into high latitudes where warmth permits their survival. Insects swarm in forests and wetlands, pollinating plants, recycling nutrients and forming the base of many food webs. The balance of these communities demonstrates an ecosystem in full recovery, where each layer of life interacts with others in stable cycles. The oceans of the late Paleocene mirror this stability. Circulation is fully re-established, oxygen levels are restored, and plankton communities are productive. Coccolithophores, diatoms, and dinoflagellates contribute to marine food webs, while benthic foraminifera repopulate seafloors. Sharks remain dominant predators, joined by diverse teleost fishes and cephalopods. Coral reefs, still recovering from extinction losses, remain limited, but shallow marine environments host bivalves, sponges, and other invertebrates that support coastal ecosystems. The warm, nutrient-rich seas of the epoch foster continuity in marine life, paralleling the abundance seen on land. Geological processes continue to shape landscapes. The Atlantic Ocean widens, India approaches Asia, and volcanic activity persists in regions such as Greenland and the North Atlantic. Sedimentation in river basins builds thick layers of sand, silt, and coal, recording the spread of forests and wetlands. Mountain building alters rainfall patterns, influencing ecosystems at regional scales. These geological changes occur slowly but continuously, ensuring that the stage upon which life recovers is never static. The interplay of tectonics and biology defines the backdrop of stability, with continents drifting steadily toward configurations that will influence future climates. At the microscopic level, tissues and isotopes continue to record environmental conditions. Tree rings in high latitudes reveal annual growth cycles, pollen grains preserve evidence of forest dominance, and mammal teeth display wear consistent with mixed diets of fruits and leaves. Oxygen isotopes in marine shells confirm warm ocean temperatures, while carbon isotopes document the cycling of greenhouse gases through plants and animals. These subtle details align with the broader narrative of stability, showing that the balance of climate and life is not an illusion, but a measurable reality preserved in stone. The food webs of the late Paleocene are layered and resilient. Plants form the base, their productivity sustained by greenhouse warmth and rainfall. Insects, small mammals, and birds exploit this productivity, serving in turn as prey for larger animals. Herbivorous mammals graze and browse, while predatory birds and early carnivorous mammals regulate their populations. Aquatic systems mirror this structure, with plankton feeding small fish, which feed larger fish, which in turn fall prey to sharks. Each level is connected to others, and energy flows through ecosystems in cycles that demonstrate stability. This balance allows diversity to expand further, setting the stage for continued evolutionary radiation. The resilience of Paleocene ecosystems lies in their adaptability. Forests regenerate quickly after disturbances such as floods or volcanic activity. Wetlands absorb excess water and recycle nutrients. Animal populations recover from predation or disease through rapid reproduction. The greenhouse climate itself, though extreme by modern standards, provides consistency that supports these cycles. Without ice ages or sharp seasonal extremes, ecosystems stabilize around predictable patterns of warmth and moisture. This consistency fosters both abundance and complexity, ensuring that ecosystems can withstand localized disruptions. By the end of the Paleocene, the Earth presents a fully rebuilt biosphere. The scars of the mass extinction are still visible in the absence of groups such as ammonites and non-avian dinosaurs, but new lineages have taken their place. Birds dominate many terrestrial niches, mammals expand in size and diversity, reptiles thrive in aquatic habitats, and flowering plants rule the forests. Microorganisms, fungi, and insects weave these groups together into functioning systems. The world is no longer a landscape of survival alone, but a planet of stability and growth. The Paleocene closes as an epoch of balance. It begins in the shadow of catastrophe, passes through phases of recovery and reorganization, and ends in a world that is warm green and fully alive. The legacy of this epoch is not dramatic upheaval, but the establishment of conditions that allow the next great evolutionary radiations to unfold. In the details of its climate, vegetation, animals, and tissues, the Paleocene represents a planet reborn no longer defined by extinction, but by the resilience and creativity of life.